Hey you guys, Gilbert Cantu with little Jade Bonsai here. I wanted to make a video on wiring. I get a lot of questions from people asking me about wire. What's the best type of wire to wire a tree? Can I get it from Home Depot? Do I even need to wire all my trees? So I'm going to kind of go through and talk about it and just kind of give you some helpful tips and things that I've figured out over the years on the best way to wire a Portulacaria, because after all, they are not like a lot of other species of bonsai. The bark is a lot softer, so there are just some little techniques and things that, like I said, I've kind of picked up. And so, yeah, let's just kind of work on a tree, wire a tree, and hopefully you can kind of get something out of it. So let's get started. So when it comes to Portulacaria, or the little jades as I like to call them, not all of them specifically have to be wired. You can kind of grow most of them with a clip and grow method, which is basically you're training a tree just by trimming it. This tree right here, kind of move this back here. This tree right here is actually a twin trunk. It's not two different trees, but actually one tree and a twin trunk. It's defined as a twin trunk because it's connected right at the base of the tree. So it's not a Y type of tree. So it is a twin trunk, but I've just been kind of trimming this in this little shape here, and I'm just going to continue doing that. So this tree, I mean, I can probably wire it, maybe bring some of these down and add a little more bend, but I don't necessarily have to. So you kind of use your best judgment, if the tree needs wire. I don't think this one does. It already has a nice shape. So I'm going to kind of skip this tree. I'm not going to wire it. This one here, it already has a nice little bend in the trunk here. So I've been kind of training it small and keeping it trimmed like this for about probably 2 years in this little pot. And so next year I'm going to put it in a real bonsai pot and do that. But this tree, I don't need to wire it. It's kind of already has a nice shape, so I've been doing fine just with clip and grow, so I'm not going to wire this one. Now, this tree right here, a lot of my trees that I'm working on, I mean mostly all of them really, I've kind of developed from cuttings and growing them myself. This was a cutting that I grew and rooted probably last spring, because I did buy these little pots from the dollar store. I remember that, and that was last year. So this is actually a year old. So what I do is whenever I grow them, I put them in the pot, root them in here, let them grow, just keep trimming them back. So when I'm training them and I'm growing them, I don't necessarily have a certain style in mind. I almost just kind of, because I do have a lot of trees, I just kind of trim and keep trimming them back and grow as many branches as I can until it kind of feels like something is jumping out at me. So this already kind of has a lot of nice growth on it. Like I said, it's a young plant. So if I were to wire this tree, what would I do? It's almost straight. It's got a little curve to it, but you know what? I would probably maybe wire it and bring it over, maybe bringing it down like this, angling it, and just adding some bend to it. You kind of see that. So I might go ahead and do that with this tree. I think I am. Yeah, I think I am. Okay, so let's get into wiring. So the first step is deciding on a style, on how you're going to wire it. We've kind of established that I'm going to bend this over a little bit more, kind of giving it some better shape. So once we kind of know where we want to go with it, it's not much, but it's going to add a big difference to this tree. Once you kind of know where you want to go, then it comes to choosing the wire. Now, when it comes to wire, kind of off balance here. When it comes to wire, This is basically copper colored aluminum wire. You can find it on Amazon, eBay. I actually buy it on eBay a lot. So it's aluminum wire. It's copper color. It's very soft. I mean, looks pretty thick, right? But it is pretty soft. So I can cut them with these. Of course, if you have wire cutters, that's probably good. But these are, again, dollar store trimmers, so I go through them a lot. So let's decide what wire we're going to use for the tree. Now, the best way to decide that is you take your wire, which is, this is a smaller wire, this is 1.5, 2. You basically take the wire and straighten out, let me do this one. Straighten out a piece. Now, if you can hold the trunk or the branch you're gonna wire, and you kind of move the wire to bend the trunk, and your wire bends, which this one does, and this is definitely not strong enough. So you want to use something that's gonna bend the trunk that you know will hold. So this looks pretty strong. The wire's not really bending. So I'm gonna go with this, which this is probably a 3 millimeter size wire. So I'm gonna go with this since I'm gonna wire the trunk. So what I'm gonna do, first step is, I'm gonna probably go maybe the length of what I'm gonna wire and maybe a half. So cut that. Now, when it comes to wiring, this is probably the thickest wire that I will put on a Portulacaria, because the bark is soft. It can kind of bite into the bark. So this is maybe the thickest I will go. But also, if you have, let me see, if I had maybe this is a 3.5. If I had only smaller wire, I could actually wire the tree and then go back in with another wire the same size to kind of double up on it. And that is usually like your safer bet, because you can maneuver this wire around the trunk or the branch and do it again without damaging the tree. So let me kind of show you an example of one I just did. So I actually wired this one yesterday, and you can kind of see where I have multiple wire on this one branch, which actually makes it easier instead of trying to wrap around a big, thick, large wire around it. So basically start off with one wire and go back on with the second one, and it makes it easier to wire. So this one though, this is, like I said, this is probably the thickest one I'm gonna put on this tree, on any of my trees. But let me kind of go ahead and get started with it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this wire into the soil right at the base, since I am wiring the trunk, and I'm gonna wrap this at a 45-degree angle, about 45-degree angle on the trunk. And I'm gonna go around keeping that same angle. And one thing that you will experience when you're wiring a Portulacaria is leaf drop. Your leaves will fall, and it's perfectly normal, because it's impossible to wire a tree without dropping some leaves. So I'm kind of wrapping it around right here. That's about fine for me. So now that I've wired this one, it's kind of got a good angle going. You can kind of see that. The wrong way to wire a tree, a branch, is And I see it a lot, and it's kind of, and I think it just comes because you just don't know. You have to do it at a 45-degree angle because that's where the plant will, the wire will hold at kind of its maximum strength. But I've seen people, they'll go and they'll wrap and wrap and wrap and wrap like this, and it doesn't hold. It's not gonna hold if you wrap it like that. That's too tight. It has to be at the angle, and you have to use a good enough thickness around the tree, around the branch. So don't wrap it like that. Wrap it at a 45-ish degree angle. Okay, so this is kind of what I did. I wired it, right? And I am gonna bend it over a little bit. I'm not gonna go too fast. I'm gonna take my time with it. And the reason I can bend this easily is a really good tip is to not water your tree for about a week. If you're gonna wire your tree, don't water it for about a week, because what happens is if it has a lot of water in it, the water is going to be stored inside the trunk. It's going to be filled with water, and you are more likely to crack a branch, and you will hear it. You will definitely hear that crack when you bend it. So dehydrate it a little bit. Don't water it for about a week, which will actually make the branches more flexible and less likely to crack. So now I've bent that back like that. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna angle this a little bit more. I'm making a mess here. You don't want to see my office floor because I have soil everywhere. Okay. So you can kind of see that. Okay, that's kind of the shape I'm gonna go. Okay, I got some soil, and I'm actually gonna add a little bit of soil into this here, because I'm trying to lift it up and change the angle a little bit without repotting the whole tree. So, bringing that up. Using my fingers to make it a little more compact. Okay. Okay. So it's kind of hard to see the silhouette because we're going to clean it up yet right now. So this is kind of the angle I'm going to go with. I'm going to trim this root sticking up there. Okay. Now, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and clean up the tree. Now that I kind of have the shape I wanted, I'm going to clean up the tree and remove a lot of the branches that are kind of not needed. Well, let's see here. Let's kind of take a look. We have this branch, kind of hard to see here. It's kind of growing right underneath this. I'm going to remove that because it's kind of undesirable there. when you're wiring a tree and you're training a tree, you have to think about not what the tree is going to look like immediately after I wire and trim this up, but how it's going to look a few years down the road from now. Because we're not training it for now, we're training it for later. So there has to be enough room between the branches, and think about how, do you want this tree to be a big tree, or are you training it for this size? I'm training this tree for this size, so I'm gonna create the foundation and then of course maintain the trimming. So I'm trimming some of these branches that are kind of facing down. I mean, the underneath leaves. You want to have no growth kind of on the bottom and all your growth kind of on the top. So let me trim these up here. Looks good so far. I'm not gonna keep that tree. And you also need to think about bar branches. You never want to have branches that are directly across from each other on the trunk. So when you're wiring a tree, it's all about design. You are designing the tree. So when it comes to design, the number one rule in design is aesthetics. So your tree has to look balanced. It doesn't look balanced when there are even number of things. So you kind of have to stagger it and go odd number. So if you have a branch here, you don't want a branch here. If you have one here, you don't want there. So you kind of have to think about aesthetics and balance. So you can kind of see where I'm going with that. Now, am I going to keep this tree, this branch here? I am probably going to cut it off, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to grow this as a sacrifice branch. I'm going to let it grow as far as I can, and I may trim it back. So what I'm essentially doing is thickening up, using this to thicken up the trunk a little bit more to add some more taper to the tree, and then I will remove it and this will become a future tree. So I'm going to leave that there for now. This one is kind of growing at an angle here. You know what? I'm going to wire another branch. I'm going to wire this one. See, because when you do your wiring, if you have a branch at a certain angle, you want to make sure all the branches on that tree kind of follow those same angles. So you don't want one growing up while everything else is kind of growing down. So let's see. I might use, here we go. I'm gonna use the 1.5 wire. So probably maybe about that much. Cut it off. And I'm gonna follow the same line as the wire that's on it, because you don't want to crisscross wires, wire one direction and wire the other direction. You want to kind of follow the same lines. So bringing that there. Dropping leaves, perfectly fine. They will grow back. Okay. Now, when you are wiring, you want to finish with the wire going up and not down, because sometimes they do come loose. So You want to wire the branch and don't bend it until both sides are secure. Okay, see how this one's sticking up here? I'm gonna bring it down. You kind of look at the angle here. There we go. Trim that there. Okay. So, if you see this tree, here's your apex. You can see the angle, what I did. The line of the trunk kind of comes up, and then it kind of comes back that way. So that's kind of a cool little shape, right? So it was growing this way and I brought it back this way. I'm gonna leave this branch as a sacrifice branch, make sure the soil is covered. And if you have any leaves sitting on the soil, I always like to remove them because they're just little soggy leaves and they're just gonna add more moisture, which you don't want. You want your soil to dry out between waterings. So your soil needs to drain well. So yeah, here we go. This is kind of what we ended up with. Looks pretty good. It's a small tree, but not all trees have to be 50-year-old trees. You know, that's what's awesome about it. You know, I started off as a beginner. I was so jealous of these guys that had these big, giant, huge trees. And it's like, damn, how do I get that, you know? And it just takes time. But with me, I don't have a whole lot of time. So I'm going to work on these small trees. And that's what's so awesome about the Portulacarias is they grow so fast. But I don't know. I love little trees. You know, this is a shohin sized tree, which if you're talking about Japanese bonsai, the smaller ones are lamame, which is probably a little smaller than this. And this is like shohin size. So this is maybe about 6-7 inches in height. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this tree like this. I'm going to let it grow for, I don't know, maybe this next summer, take it out and pot it up. It just kind of depends on how it looks, but you're in no rush. You know, don't try to rush it and wire the tree. If it needs it, wire it. Leave the wire on for a minimum of, I would say, 6 months. You know, you really want the tree to kind of hold the shape, but you could tell if it's biting into the bark after 6 months. The wire may need to come off. But if you look at it and there's not a lot of new growth and it just feels like it hasn't filled in, then leave the wire on longer. You just kind of have to look at the tree and look at what it's saying that it needs. So if it's a year, then leave the wire on for a year. There's no real time frame, but I would say somewhere between 6 months to a year on a Portulacaria, just to guarantee that it's going to hold that shape. Because I've made the mistake myself where I've wired a tree, I've got too excited, I'm like, man, okay, it looks good, it's growing into the shape, I'm going to put it in a pot and make it look kind of like a finished style tree, right? Remove the wire, and then it just kind of slowly starts to move back, and it's like, damn it, man, I got to do it again. So take your time with it. You're in no rush. That's really it. You know, whenever the time comes where the wire is ready to be removed, like this one, like I said, maybe next summer, I will get wire cutters and I will cut it. Do not try to unwind the wire because you're going to damage the tree. I guarantee that. So get the wire cutters, you know, cut them in every section and till all the pieces fall off. So that's really it. If you like the video, leave a comment, tell me what you think, and if it helps you, great, but if not, then, you know, you can kind of experiment and see what works for you, because I know it's different for everybody. But this is kind of what I do in my success with this. So I hope you learned something, and hope you have a good day, and thanks for watching. Be sure to check out my other videos and subscribe. Thanks.